Now we've got the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Iowa, Admiral Mike Franken. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Ryan, good to be here. Thank you.
Big news out of Iowa, first off. A new Des Moines Register poll conducted by Ann Seltzer, who is among the most accurate, trusted pollsters in the country, showed you down only 3 points to Chuck Grassley, 46 to 43. And that's a change from you being down 8 points in the last poll that I believe was conducted in July. What's your reaction to this poll?
Well, our internal to the campaign, and just as you see as you travel around the state, and what we've been witnessing throughout the state is there's a sea change, as we would say in nautical terms, a movement where people just want something different. And in Iowa, to use an agricultural reference, there's a growing season for everyone, and perhaps Senator Grassley's time has come, and it's the autumn. And my job is to just represent Iowans to the best of my ability. And we saw the shift through the last few months that people are starting to coalesce around us, and that's been positive. And we expected it to be well into single digits and closing on parity.
With that said, how do you flip those few percentage points of voters who are still undecided?
Well, so we're on TV throughout the state, for much of the state anyway. We're on now a 10-day trip, and I don't believe my opponent can stay with us in terms of our operational tempo of this. We are availing ourselves to all citizens of Iowa. We don't just have a curated audience. We take all comers, and we talk, we answer questions, and I'm affable, I'm available, and I think I represent the future of Iowa. Instead of just negative ads one after another, we actually talk about solutions and problems, and we recognize where Iowa needs to do better. And I think Iowans are certainly know this and are appreciative of the fact that we recognize the challenges ahead of us.
With that said, what do you say to voters out there who look at Iowa, those Trump voters, for example, who look at Iowa and say, look, it's never going to happen? Like, how do you flip a state that Trump won by 8 points in 2020? Because you will need Republican voters. So how do you get those people to, not just independents, not just Democrats, to turn out, but how do you actually flip people who've showed up for Trump in 2020?
Well, Iowa's the state that does this large pendulum swings. We were the first one to recognize Jimmy Carter. We were the first ones to recognize Barack Obama. And counties in Iowa went 20 points for Barack Obama, and then 4 years later, 20 points for Donald Trump. So there's some sensing, you've got to answer the demands of the constituency. They want to know that you are core to them, and this is what we're seeing throughout the state. So, we've got a large contingent of Republicans for Franken. We far outdistance Senator Grassley on the number of independents that come to our way by a factor of 2, I think. And I would expect that's going to increase. You can't win in Iowa by being a strict Democrat, nor can you win as a strict Republican. You've got to be across the spectrum on the various issues and answer the constituency.
Obviously, Chuck Grassley is very old. He's running for a term that would end when he is 95. How does that factor into this race as far as you're concerned?
Well, I mean, it's not the reason I entered this race. It's not that I thought that was going to be the significant issue in this race, but it's an apparent issue for those of age. And I don't have to explain the implications of age to anybody in the state of Iowa, especially those of age. I mean, everyone knows that it's not linear, and the effects of time moves in one direction, and the voting record of Senator Grassley is as it is. That can't be changed, nor can the passage of time. So a 70-year-old knows that from 70 to 80, they expect something different from what it was from 60 to 70. So I think they want to be represented by someone who's well with the times, who's got the technology underpinnings, that has the empathy and the broad understanding of the world. Senator Grassley's from Butler County. He's lived in Butler County and Washington, D.C. So Butler County, just a little bit of time in Butler, and Washington, D.C., a lot since 1975. So his perspective is Two, my perspective is multiple zip codes from around the world, multiple continents. And that's a bigger perspective, a more broad-minded approach to what's the best of the breed, what's the best opportunities, what's the greatest good for the greatest number of people, with a special emphasis for those that are most trying. And when I have these discussions, the Republicans walk up, grab one of our yard signs and says, "Thank you very much."
Now, with regard to the issues in particular, I mean, you had mentioned before that you need independents, you need Republicans to win these races. What issues have brought those people, those independents, those Republicans to your campaign versus that of Chuck Grassley?
Immigration, certainly Roe, for women throughout the state, regardless of your political affiliation. This is an affront on equality. It's as simple as that. And although they may very well be under the chapeau of pro-life, it's an affront that men are doing against women. And they don't take kindly to that. They have daughters, they've got grandchildren. It's a disappointment. The environmental concerns, we need to generate a new generation of farmers. This morning I spent on a farm in Crawford County in a combine. It's expensive to be a farmer today, hugely expensive. You can't just break into farming. So we need to develop a different type of agriculture in the state. These issues are all highly diverse. You can't be subscribed to whoever was your biggest donor in a corporate world. We don't do that in my campaign. We have individuals, in healthcare. Iowa's an elderly state. You've got a political party who has stated quite clearly that they want to privatize Social Security and Medicare. Well, this has not gone well in the state of Iowa. This will not go well in the future, and most people believe it's a profit grab, and benefits will go down, and profits for those managing it will go up. And historical precedence is true for that. There's a host of issues, and I read the audience and I see what the topical issues are, and then after I give my little spiel, I let people ask questions, and inevitably, those questions will lead to what's most on people's minds.
With that said, you do have the advantage of speaking to an electorate because they are older. Those are the people who are more keyed into politics anyway. Do you find that, for example, the issue of Republicans broadcasting that they intend to eliminate Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, do you find that that's broken through to the electorate? Because obviously messaging is always a huge issue, but I mean, you're speaking to an electorate that's mostly keyed in anyway. So do you find that message has gone through, that people know that Republicans do intend to eliminate Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security if they can?
Well, I don't think it's been stated exceedingly clearly to them. And most people would be absolutely apoplectic at even the thought of it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the general thought would be, are you kidding me? No way would they do this.
Which, by the way, is exactly what they said about Roe. Cut to, here we are with Roe having been overturned, and now we're trying to scramble to figure out what to do to protect women's reproductive rights. So we ignore these things at our own peril.
Or Citizens United, or a host of other issues, the EPA. Right. I mean, this Supreme Court's going to do a whole bunch of things yet, to include perhaps dictate who you can marry. People should be fearful, and this is the first time we've had such a judiciary in my lifetime, anyway. Perhaps going back to the 1930s, where it is this partisan. This is the lifeblood of Senator Grassley and Mitch McConnell, who have dictated this upon America. And when you talk about fairness, the basic element of fairness, what is proper with the Merrick Garland nomination or the Amy Coney Barrett nomination? What's really fair? And chances are they're going to say, you know what, that just was patently unfair. Or Judge Jackson, the fact that she's hugely qualified and she gets no votes by Senator Grassley. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is an affront to people's sensibilities.
You served, I believe, 36 years in the Navy. Is that correct?
36 as an officer, yeah.
As someone with military experience, can you speak to what we're seeing from the GOP these days, from January 6th to the continued assault on our democracy by virtue of elevating these election deniers throughout the U.S.?
That's really the coin of the realm here. We have a political party who attempted to overthrow the basic element of democracy, the value of your vote. And not only did they attempt to do this in a lie, cheat, steal manner, but they also took people's lives in the execution of that. So I have this odd situation in life where defending what is America, our rights, our way of life, not always were we right, that's for sure, internationally. But I swore an oath, so has Senator Grassley, perhaps about the same number of times as I have, where it says, I swear I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I now find it necessary to do my continuing duty against those threats to domestic elements of our Constitution. And if anybody thinks this isn't an affront, or if anybody thinks that this is a one-shot wonder by the Republican Party, I would say think again, because they're attempting to rationalize it, institutionalize it, and even codify it.
What's been the most memorable day on the campaign trail for you?
It will be the last day of the campaign.
Yeah.
One day we're driving to Carroll, Iowa, and on a back road, and we stopped for a Stop and Shop or something to get gas and things. And I said to the woman behind the counter, I said, "How much do you make?" I don't mean to pry, but how much do you make? Right away, she says, $9.50. I said, "Do you have a benefits package?" "No." Right away, she responds. She didn't have a ring on her finger. And she was 40-ish and thereabouts. And I said, "Do you get 40 hours of work weekend?" And she goes, "Yes, plus usually a day on the weekends." So if you titrate all that down, she's probably a single parent. She is probably, this is her only job, if not something in the evening. She is held rather captive in where she is because of the demands of God knows what. And she probably cannot remember the last time she's gone on a significant vacation, gone to the dentist, had a nice evening out, or had at the end of the month some money to put into savings. And that woman is one malady, one fender bender, one tornado away from financial ruin. And her life of dignity is a challenge in terms of climbing the socioeconomic ladder. And I looked at her in the eye, and we had a moment, and I said, I'll try to do better.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think so often what gets lost is, like, if you're running for office and you're not looking out to help the people who need your help, and you're looking only to serve the people who don't need your help, then what are you doing? You know what I mean? And so I think that gets lost in so much of this. And we talk about, so much of what we talk about in politics, the whole narrative on both sides is a bunch of bullshit anyway. But what gets lost is the people who are actually impacted by this, and the people who need help and who need some dignity in their lives, and not just tax cuts for people who don't need tax cuts. It's people who need some help because, like you said, they haven't had a vacation in God knows how long. They're working every single day plus weekends. They don't have a day off. They're captive to their jobs in from gas stations to cashiers to wherever it is. And that's the part that kind of I feel gets lost in so much of the bullshit talking points about God knows what.
Yeah, so I'm going to be fine in life. My wife's going to be fine in life. But this is about servant leadership. And you should put country over party. But more important than all that, you should put all of those larger demands over yourself. You should be a latter consideration. And the fact that we have developed a system where money from corporate entities, from dark money, can dictate and erase it from being a meritocracy as to who gets elected, and then consequently generally own a person's vote for perpetuity, even though they have no understanding or deeper understanding other than doing what's the direction of this organization that gives them money or pluses up their already substantial standard of living. And in my world, you got to help your neighbor. You got to lift them up, lighten their burden, give them a path forward as best you can, give them the health, education, clean food, clean water supply, safety in an environment, health care, so they can reach that first rung of that ladder and climb up. I would expect that woman has no idea when the last time she's been to a dentist, and I bet even things like such simplistic things as changing the oil in her car is something that gets neglected because she didn't have the money for it. And I mean, imagine living like that. We can do better in America. We must do better in America.
Mike, if you want people to take away one thing from hearing you, what would you want it to be?
Well, these are serious times, both domestically and internationally. This is not a time for partisan hacks. This is not a time for self-centered politicians. This is a time for servant leaders and leaders with a high degree of empathy to make the right decisions for the future of our states, our nation, and humanity. We are teetering both domestically and internationally. I would urge people to be wide-eyed about this and vote for those individuals that will serve their best interest, that will serve their children's best interest and those around them, and live by this concept of supporting those you've never met as much as those you know. And in the end, be that person who plants the tree whose shade you'll never use.
Perfectly put. Let's end with this. How can we help your campaign?
Oh, well, frankenforiowa.com is our website. I want to be a better, not a better politician as much as being more aware of the topics, being more broad-minded on the intricacies of things. I'm a policy wonk. I'm an engineer. I'm a science person. I want to get into things and how to get them fixed. So do communicate and how we can be better. For now, the big deal is to get my word out in the state of Iowa, my name out. And to do that, we need to be on TV throughout the state and radio, et cetera. So do in the state of Iowa and elsewhere, come to our rallies, which we've got a series of them coming up. And I appreciate the donations to get our word out as best we can. And please, as I did today, vote.
We'll leave it there. Mike Franken, thank you so much for taking the time and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, sir.